All right.
Hello, hello.
What's up, guys? Paul Wood from No Spoon.
I guess we'll go this way. Philip Rich.
Cole Millward.
David Hasselhoff.
You son of a...
My name is James Nelson, also from the band No Spoon.
And so it begins. So what's going on tonight, gentlemen?
Yes, we've all got here today to discuss about the lyrics of the album, the story behind it. We have a lot of comments on all the social medias asking what the lyrics mean, what the story means, where did it come from, and so that's what we're here to do today.
That's right.
Yep. So, let's see.
It shall begin where it ends, in a manner of speaking.
With House
At the end.
42 Lakeview Drive.
Because the
Track
last song
numero
is House
uno.
at the Begin. So you get it. You get it.
It's a play on words,
Yeah.
Yeah.
kind of like a play,
This is great content.
like a story.
Kind of like a play, which reference there. We'll get into that.
So this song, even though it's the first track of the album, this takes place later in the story.
That's an interesting perspective.
That was always in my head when I wrote the music.
Okay, well, how I've always envisioned track number one is the overarching theme of the record is the title. It is Opus. It is about a singular character, our main protagonist, who is trying to write his magnum opus. There is a piece of music that's like stuck in his head, and he's trying to find a way to share it with the world. And I've always viewed that the opening song is like his starting routine, right? The way he kind of gets into the mode is he sits down, just him and his acoustic guitar, and kind of, flow of consciousness sort of talks about whatever he's got going on. Or at least that's how I imagined it. But what's really happening in that track as it pertains to the story is our character is setting the stage for you, right? Like he's telling you where the story is going to take place and who the players are.
Yeah, we've mentioned before that the album kind of follows a musical kind of structure, and there's a lot of sort of rock operas or musicals that do begin with this sort of lone character on the stage with the single spotlight on them, just sort of beginning to set the stage. And as that song sort of progresses, like I don't know about you, Phil, but like when I picture this in my head, that's how it goes down. And when it hits the moment in that first song, when it starts to introduce those other instruments, I imagine like more lights coming up and maybe a curtain coming up. Are we seeing more stuff, right?
Definitely imagining like a stage aesthetic there where it's like all dark, singular spotlight on the main character, and then when the orchestra and the choir starts coming in, the curtain starts pulling back and you start to see the room and the lights start coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also it's like, the orchestration and the choirs coming in. What I imagine is that as he's singing it, that's what he's kind of hearing in his head as he's singing and playing on the guitar.
Totally. At the end of the day, the first track is kind of just stage setting. It's not
intro to the house, it's mundane lifestyle.
Yeah, it's not like there's not really like narrative happening yet. I do kind of want to bring up like something that some listeners have talked about, like the lyrics, particularly like the way that we chose to sort of word things. Like I've in some cases I've seen it like formulated as a criticism that some of the lyrics are like perhaps a little too simplistic or a little too like on the nose. Particularly lyrics like the referring to the house, it's old but not so bad or whatever, and not being a big fan of those lyrics, I guess. And I think in those cases, certainly what I think I was trying to get across with lyrics like that there at the very beginning of the album is that his world is kind of gray. it's not really going the way that he envisioned his life going. And when your world looks like that, when your experience of life looks like that, you don't use colorful language.
Yeah,
Your language is muted and whatever. Notice, like, by the time we get towards the end of the album, it's like things are a bit larger and more poetic,
for
I
sure.
suppose. So that, I guess, that was something that I definitely envisioned when writing the lyrics for the earlier part of the album, was that it's intended to sort of feel small and unimpressive. Then it sort of grows over the course of the album.
I think it serves a twofold function there, where having a simpler sort of lyric structure, not these big esoteric words of all the vagaries and, trying to sound impressive, it accurately portrays, you don't have to guess what's happening. Anybody who's listened to the first record, they're probably bored with us already because it's like, well, we kind of already got that, because I think the lyrics do a very good job in that opening track of what we intended. It sets the stage and you don't really have to guess where he's at and what he's got going on,
It's laying the framework for everything that's better come.
because the lyric choice is so precise and so, you could use the word simplistic, but I believe that the words we chose were still very thoughtful.
For sure.
And going back to what you said a second ago about, because his world is kind of gray and he's kind of fallen into a rut, right? He's been trying to get this music out of his head, and he hasn't been so successful. It's created, and the place he's living, the environment he's in, isn't so grandiose either. I think the music kind of represents that too, right? Where it's supposed to be kind of small and kind of simple, which is how the whole album starts off. That's why we chose the idea of him sitting alone with an acoustic guitar, just playing what's happening around him, because the opus isn't written yet.
Yeah. Which, and this may be getting slightly ahead, so maybe we'll come back to this, but this idea, this mood kind of continues into the beginning of The Death of Simpson, which is track 3, a little later, so we'll get there in a second. So, yeah, track 1 is kind of just, it's stage setting, it's introducing the setting of the album as it will play out.
Well, and then the lyrics get really deep with Implosion Overture.
Yeah.
Very.
Those are
Those
my
are the
favorite
most
lyrics.
deep
Wow.
lyrics.
Yeah.
Lyrical writing. the
I
entire
swear I
album.
tear up every time I hear them.
I mean, the first line alone.
Yeah, that first line, the
I mean, there's honestly not much to say about.
It's an
Implosion
overture.
It's
It's
an
in the
overture.
name.
It's instrumental. It's the whole idea is introducing musical motifs from across the album in sort of
Yeah.
different ways than what you hear when those motifs pop up later.
And I don't remember, did we write that one earlier on, or did we write that towards the end?
No, that was the last song to be written.
Okay.
For the album, because we we did it kind of intentionally as no, we don't want to write this one until all of the actual material has been created, so that we can then sort of pick and choose from all of these different
That's
spots
right.
across the album to make an overture out of.
That's awesome. That's actually a nugget I was unaware of.
Yeah, well, I mean, if anything, maybe this is just how I feel right now, but I think that's how you should do an overture.
Well, yeah.
I think it's weird to start with one. I mean, now you can reverse it. You can start with an overture and then extrapolate little pieces to build full songs off of. But we want it to be a little more intentional about it.
Yeah.
So, that's the Implosion Overture.
Moving on.
It contributes
Never mind.
probably the least to the story and what's happening.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
and the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's a second instrumental on the record, 4D printing, and when we get to that, in great contrast, there is actually a plot point, which is half the reason I really wanted to do this, because if we don't tell you what the plot point is, you probably won't get it unless you're really paying attention to Within the Realm. But
I mean, I'm in the
We'll get
band and
there.
I still don't get it. So.
cool. Well, that's why we're here, baby.
Yeah, we're about to
Yeah.
educate you.
All right.
Yeah, Implosion Overture, if anything, it's just more of a painting. It's like a painting of the scenes that you'll kind of envision.
Well, the story
throughout the
really
album.
opens up with Death of Simpson too.
Yeah.
You see a lot more of the characters that are involved. Obviously, there's a big point in the story where something happens. I'll let you guys get more into it, but
It's over here.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah.
You seem to have segued quite nicely. Get into some Death of
great
Simpson. What's going on?
detail.
well, so I mean, he wakes up. You know, the main character wakes up. You're introduced to more characters. Simpson being one of them. I mean, all of a sudden somebody's dead, and it is Simpson. But
What? Thank you, Paul.
that's what I'm
James,
looking
do you know what the song's about?
Yeah, so it starts off, and then Simpson dies, and then the next song happens.
Okay, I'll jump in. So, like I was sort of mentioning a moment ago, like with the intro and the stage setting and everything, everything's kind of kept low energy. And we do certainly ramp up the energy during Implosion Overture and during the opening of Death of Simpson. It does crash in a very big way, which is very cool. But the first lyrics that appear in Death of Simpson are similarly very soft. And the chord progression and everything is kind of lazy sounding.
Yeah.
And it's very intentional. Like, especially that, like, guitar solo mid-verse is very, like, it's sliding all over the place. It's very, like, reverbed out. The whole thing is giving this, like, lazy feeling.
Like you just woke up.
Right. Which is like the kind of the whole thing. So, again, and this comes to sort of, like, another facet of, like, some of what maybe some people may not care for in the lyrics, which is the sort of literalism that we went for kind of across the album, but especially early on. Like the lyrics there in the beginning, it's 1 p.m. and I just woke up. I should have gone to bed much earlier, like, etc. So yeah, it's literal, but like kind of along the lines of what Phil was alluding to earlier about staying away from like big lofty terms and vagaries and stuff like that. Sure, it's cool to be able to tell a story with, you know, these much more conceptual terms, so people have to really, really dig to find the story. But something that I like about the way that we did the story on this is that we wrote the lyrics to be kind of literal and telling the story, and so the emotions are drawn out of how you picture the characters and their settings. We're not sitting there telling you, I'm so sad, I'm so lonely, I'm so this or that. We're giving you a mental picture of where the characters are. And since you can picture in your mind, hopefully, what the characters are doing based on what we're describing, hopefully you can sort of pull out what those characters must be feeling. It's a different form of getting the emotion across that I think is, even though we're speaking in literal terms about the events, we're not being very literal about the emotions. We're allowing the listener to pull those emotions out themselves. So even though we have that, it's 1 p.m. and I just woke up, etc., like, all of us have kind of been in that position at one point in time, waking up late and kind of regretting not having gone to bed earlier or whatever.
Every
And
day.
so I don't need to yeah, every day. We didn't need to write lyrics talking about, you know, I feel so this, that, or the other. All we have to do is tell you what the character is sort of saying to himself.
And the music reinforces the emotion
Right.
of the scene.
Exactly.
I feel like that's more of like our music philosophy, like wrapped up in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
As far as what's actually happening in the story, I want to touch a little bit base on that, like get into the nitty gritty of it. Contrasting the opening track, where it's more like the protagonist is addressing his audience, right? Like he's breaking the fourth wall on the opening track, kind of setting the stage for you. In Death of Simpson, the first song where we get into the meat and potatoes of the story, he is now in his world, right?
Yeah.
and it's happening in the present. It is currently happening to him, which is why everything's being done in the present tense, right? Like, it's 1 p.m. and I just woke up. I should have gone to bed earlier. Like, he's telling you what's happening to him right now, right? And he's describing his typical day. Earlier, he was setting, the stage, the environment, who the players are going to be. Well, now he's actually going into his day, where he stayed up all night. He's been trying to write this piece of music. It keeps eluding him. And he's, about to go downstairs, having, woken up later than everyone else in the house. And he's expecting to get, jeered at by the other tenants that live in the house. Right. And he's like kind of psyching himself up for it. It's like, oh, great, here we go again. They're going to give me shit for staying up all night. Pardon my French.
No.
But when he makes it to the bottom of the stairs, right before his normal day routine happens, that is where the twist happens in the song, and that's where the story really begins to move along at a clip, because when he reaches the bottom of the stairs and he turns and he looks down the hall, he notices a pool of blood coming from underneath the door of one of the other tenants that lives in the house. And when he rushes to get there and he swings the door open, that's my imagination. When he gets there, he notices the tenant named Simpson.
It was the only named character on the album.
Very true. Actually, no one has a name but poor Simpson. Thus, the death of Simpson. He's there and he's dead, and he has an ice pick in his chest, and there's no clue who did it. So it's like kind of murder mystery, which is why until you get later on in the song, you might think this is like a murder mystery, concept album, which, we'll forgive you for. Or you can forgive us for, maybe.
No, we've long said since the album came out that like the first half is kind of like weird murder mystery, right, Agatha Christie style, and then the back half is much more like weird trippy sci-fi.
Mm-hmm. And I think to wrap up Death of Simpson, the back half of the track is actually the fallout of, like, the immediate fallout of what's happening, right? Like, he has a daughter, a young daughter, probably somewhere between the ages of like 5 and 10.
Simpson does, we should say, not the protagonist, but Simpson, who is not the protagonist, has a daughter. Yeah,
she only just turned 6. Not like we wrote the lyrics or anything.
Right.
But he has a 6-year-old daughter, and she actually ends up walking up on the scene, and there's a moment in the song where she's like mentally not processing what's happening. And the ending of that track is left to wonder, what misfortune could befall the rest of the house. So they find Simpson dead. There's no clues or evidence as to who killed him, and everyone's in shock and wondering, oh God, what's going to happen next?
Yeah. And because of that, even though the house at the end was really the stage setting for the whole album, interestingly, the death of Simpson kind of sets the stage emotionally. Mm-hmm. Like, I think there was almost like a deceptive thing towards the beginning with that sort of lazy first verse, because then we kick in with the first chorus and at the second verse and so on and so forth, and the whole thing takes a much creepier vibe, and it's kind of clear, like there was almost nothing that we hinted at from the very first track or this first little bit of Death of Simpson that indicated that there was going to be this twist.
It was a shock.
That was going to throw
you off. It's
almost
like a jump scare.
Right. Exactly. So that's probably a good spot for us to cut it on this part. In the next part, we'll hit the next couple of songs on the album. So thanks for watching.
See you soon.
See you soon.